Hello to my research methods class. It is an honor to meet you. I hope that the first week and a half have treated you well. I'd just like to say that we're moving into the research methods topics, in which you're actually going to take a major topic in criminology, and you're going to break it down into some meaningful type of questions. The most difficult thing about research methods is learning how to ask a good question. You are now in a class where the only thing you're learning to do is ask one question and to answer that one question. So keep that in mind. Sounds like a very interesting thing to do. However, it is probably one of the more difficult things there is when it comes to doing a research paper. So the one thing that you're going to learn here is that we're going to go through a process. You're going to basically spend the whole semester working on one major theme, one major project. For instance, if I was going to do a paper for this class, me personally, I would do something on homicide, because that's the thing that I'm most interested in, are patterns of homicide. And I wouldn't do it by looking at one particular case, because that doesn't give you enough data to make any kind of assessments. What you're trying to do in a research methods class, you're trying to systematize a response to the question that you ask. And we're going to get into some of that kind of thing here in a little bit. But in answering that question, there's several things you have to do. One, you have to provide a context for which the question is being asked. Secondly, you have to find out what is the literature saying about this particular topic. So if I'm doing something like police homicide, I want to go through all the academic research, and I want to read up on police homicide, but maybe not police doing it, maybe the police being a victim, maybe the police victimizing. Maybe we take a look at the differences between what are the predictors of situations in which go into a lethal violence type of situation. Because what we're doing in sociology or criminal justice, the whole idea of crime and justice is based upon the idea of prediction. We're trying to predict either an outcome, an explanation for an outcome, or the structural patterns, or the patterns by which outcomes occur, right? So we're trying to do predictive type of measuring, which essentially is we have to have a structure, right? We have to have a theory, and from that theory we generate a series of hypotheses, and we develop a methodology, system of how we're going to get data to answer the questions. And once you have the data that has been theoretically developed, and don't worry about all this right now, because all you're doing for next week is just writing an introduction, okay? But I want you to get a feel for what you're doing. And then once you have the data collected and it is synchronized or aligned with your theory, now you can start to analyze it and get answers. Remember, the literature review, and that's reviewing all the academic literature on your topic, is going to give you kind of a directional emphasis on where the discipline is going in terms of that particular topic, right? And then the theory is going to say, here's what we can expect to happen, because theory does one of three things. It either explains, helps us understand, and predicts, right? So once you have structured a theory, now you know what kind of data you can go look for. And once you know the type of data, you develop your methodology to extract the data. Now, you're not going to actually extract data, and we're going to talk about that later in the semester. But for now, just think about when you write your introduction, you're pretending, just pretend for a second, that what you really are is you're either a prosecutor or you're a defense attorney. And you are trying to introduce the case, right? You're introducing what you're going to be looking for. And then you're going to provide some background as to what's behind the case, right? Then you're going to have a theory. Here's what we believe happened. Here's what's going to best explain this. The data. Here's the evidence, right? The analysis. Once you presented the evidence, and once you have the theory, this is what it means. So therefore, here's the conclusions. So in other words, if you watched that video last week, How to Write a Great Paper, you will see that everything is based upon introduction, background. In this class, literature review, it's going to be theory, then it's going to be data methods, which is the core of the class, and then it's going to be analysis, then it's going to be conclusions, And some of you may draw out implications of what it all means in terms of either practitioners or what it means in terms of patterns of justice or the structure of crime, patterns of crime. So at that point, you can give recommendations as to what we can do to address the opioid addiction problem, to address issues of the distribution of crystal meth, right? So in other words, or you know, life in prison, what it is to be the internal order of policing, something about street gangs, human trafficking. There's all these different types of issues that can be explored, but the difference is, here's what you're doing that we don't do with term papers. Term papers, you write a paper. Here, you're actually systematizing a process to pull together concepts so that those concepts can frame, which is why you write an introduction that's conceptual. Go watch that video. You write a conceptual introduction, and the last section, or the last sentence of that section is going to say, this research is therefore designed to analyze the relationship between an independent variable, that is a causal variable, and an outcome variable, a dependent variable. The relationship between social class inequality and gang warfare, right? Or gang-related homicide. You know, anomie in society and police violence against citizens. I don't know. Or anomie in society and police and citizen violence against police, right? The way you ask the question is going to dictate the way in which you approach the data, right? So this is not what we're doing is we're taking common sense assumptions about crime and justice and or pragmatic questions in policing, the courts, prisons, what have you, and we're systematizing a question so that we can come up with systematic data, so that we can come up with a systematic response rather than an opinion that is based upon common sense. Because if you watch the first video that I posted in the week, you'll see that common sense assumptions are typically very short-sighted because they're based upon media, they're based upon your beliefs, your socialization, and it's based upon word-of-mouth evidence. In other words, if those are your sources of data in politics, if those are your sources of data, they can be completely misleading. They can tell you a story that doesn't even exist, right? So what we're trying to do is uncover the myths about crime and actually find the patterns, right? So what I really want you to do is I want you to pick a topic in crime or something that has to do with organizations of justice or what have you. Like I said, I would do something on homicide, but that's my thing, or lethal violence, which is homicide, suicide. And you just simply want to find a topic that you're going to find to be interesting. Because over the next 16 weeks, you're breaking down the whole process. As you notice in the syllabus, every 2 weeks, you have a different assignment to submit. And I don't want it all done at one time, because if you do it all at one time, you're most likely writing a term paper that's typically filled with common sense. Here's the difference between a term paper and a research methods paper. Typically, you are the consumer of information. This time, you're the producer of information. In other words, now you're producing knowledge. You're not just receiving knowledge, you're producing it. So think of this, instead of being a passive experience, this is an active one. So next week, I want a 1-page to 2-page introduction. You have how to write a great paper, and you have that short video called Who Am I? The reason that little short video is so powerful is because it really shows you, excuse me, how you are embedded in a social system. And that embeddedness means that what we take for granted as a random event is actually a very structured type of situation. And what you're looking for are structures, that is, patterns of behavior that explain outcomes, right? So let's take a look at it as a producer of knowledge that is going to be conceptually based. It's going to be very systematic. At times you're going to get frustrated. There's going to be times where you're going to curse at me. There's going to be times where you're going to say, I don't get it. The textbook is used to allow you the background to understand what you're doing. The project is the opportunity for you to experience research and to go ahead and distribute it. All right. Now you have that paper that's due next Sunday at 11:59. It does not have to be perfect, but it must be, or it should be, conceptual. And you may not know what that is right now. Watch the video over and over again, the How to Write a Great Paper video, because that video is all conceptual. All right. So draw your concepts, think in terms of models, which is what the video is on How to Write a Great Paper. You got the schematic model, and think in terms of relationships. what causes what, okay? You start to think about independent variables have an impact on intervening variables, and those intervening variables shape an outcome variable. If you think systematically like that, then it's going to be very easy to do this paper. By the end of the semester, you're going to submit to me what is going to be regarded as your best paper ever. It won't feel comfortable initially because this is a different way of writing. This is how I taught my master's students and my PhD students when I was back in Louisville. This is a master's level type of writing, even though I believe writing is writing. It doesn't matter if you're in 5th grade or if you're in college or you're in graduate school. Good writing is good writing. So what we're going to do is focus on the process of writing so that you can submit a great paper, something that you're interested in. All right, that's going to be new next week. It's about 1 to 2 pages in length. Excuse me. And make it something you enjoy. Make it something that's pertinent to you and your worldview and what you want to learn a lot about. If you do that, you're going to be fantastic. I wish you a great semester. Please do feel free to email me at sean.hopeworks@gmail.com. That's where I'm receiving most of my requests for questions. Don't spend so much texting the phone number that I gave you on the syllabus. Instead, just send an email there, and I'll answer those questions. So just own it, breathe, just breathe. I'm not a tyrant, never have been, but I am someone who's going to guide you from today to the end. Enjoy the class, enjoy your project, and I will be back to guide you soon. Have a great semester.